on a warm summer evening, when the last pale fingers of daylight lingered on the treetops and the air felt soft and ready for sleep. A hush moved across the city of Athens, and a nearby wood beyond it. In the palace, people prepared for a great celebration. Laughter and music would soon fill the halls when Duke Theseus and his bride Hippolyta welcomed festive days together. But beyond the city's gates, where the shadows gather and the scent of grass and wild flowers deepens into the coolness of night, other things were waking. Lovers, fairies, and a handful of ordinary folk with extraordinary imaginations were about to have their lives braided together by chance and by the gentle mischief of magic. Imagine, if you will, a moon that hangs at the edge of the world like a silver boat, slow and patient above a soft, breathing landscape. Under that moon, Hermia and Lysander walked hand in hand, their feet brushing the sleeping grass. They had fled the strict rules of Athens because a stubborn law would not bend for love, and so they chose the quiet refuge of this wood. Their voices, low and tender, drifted like small birds. They spoke of hope, of a future shaped by their own hands, and of a small house far from the city where no one's commands could reach them. Not far off, Helena moved with a different rhythm. Her footsteps were quick and anxious as she followed Demetrius, the man who loved Hermia, and yet had once promised his heart to Helena. She pursued him through shadow and bramble with the devotion of someone who would rather follow than be left alone in the dark. Her feelings were a kind of relentless light, sometimes bright and hopeful, sometimes dimmed by doubt, when he turned from her with words that cut like thin winter air. She only loved him the more, stubborn as a weed that will find the sunlight. Overhead, in the hush between day and true night, the fairy world shifted and fluttered. Tiny shapes flitted among ley lines of moonlight, wings that smelled of honey and rain. Oberon, king of these secret courtly folk, and Titania, his queen, stood apart and argued like two old stars. Their disagreement was not loud. It was the sort of sorrow that affects seasons. The thunder in their quarrel was soft but real. And because the world listens when such mighty hearts are at odds, the weather itself felt the tug. The rivers seemed to swell with secret tears, and farmers in distant fields felt their labors unexpectedly balk. Oberon, troubled by the queen's refusal to yield a child who had been given into her care, hatched a plan small as a seed and clever as the turning of the wind. He called for Puck, a sprite as quick as a thought, and twice as mischievous. "Fetch me," Oberon said, "the little flower I once told you of, the one whose juice, dropped upon sleeping eyelids, will make the heart dote upon the next living thing it sees." Puck, with a grin that flashed like moonlight on water, agreed to run the earth's rim in a moment, if need be. In another pocket of the wood, honest, simple craftsmen rehearsed a comical tragedy for the Duke's wedding, a play about lovers Pyramus and Thisbe. They were earnest and unpracticed, sure of only one thing, that they meant well. Nick Bottom, the most confident of them, boasted and brimmed with pride. He imagined thunderous applause, songs to be sung, and crowns of flowers thrown at his feet. They planned by the pale map of the stars to meet near the Duke's Oak, to rehearse under the friendly watch of the moon. Now picture Titania, surrounded by her attendants, tiny fairies with names like Dew and Moth and Peace Blossom, tending the sleeping flowers and whispering lullabies. She called softly, and the forest answered with a chorus of hidden things. When she lay down upon a bed of moss, her breathing softened the air into a cradle of sighs. Oberon, moving unseen, looked upon her sleeping face and felt a pity that softened his plan. Still, he stuck to the course he had chosen. Magic, once let loose, likes to make a spectacle. Puck, fleet-footed and delighted by his own cleverness, darted along hedgerows, dipped into pools, and brushed dew from petals. He found the little purple flower, what the mortals called love and idleness, and plucked it up, catching a drop of aching beauty in his fingers. He dashed the juice into his vial and hustled back to Oberon, who instructed him with a voice like the wind through reeds. "Anoint the eyelids of a sleeping Athenian man whose heart had not been true, and when he awakes, love will be turned toward the first living thing he sees." The plan was simple, like a pebble tossed into still water. But like many pebble stones, its ripples would meet other ripples and surprise even the caster. Meanwhile, the four ordinary lovers that make this tale so human, Hermia, Lysander, Demetrius, and Helena, drifted and collapsed into sleep under the dusky canopy. Fate, whimsically guided by Oberon and by error, would soon reshuffle their feelings in a deck of soft moonlight. Puck, with a mischievous twinkle, mistook Lysander for Demetrius. Or perhaps it was simply that the sleep things in the wood wore clothing alike enough in the pale dim that cleverness itself was fooled. Gently obedient to spell and to mistake, Puck anointed the wrong eyelids. As dawn approached, the wood lay heavy with dreams. In the glow between night and day, lovers turned in their sleep, fairies played with threads of dew, and one simple, mortal man, Bottom, who had wandered close to the fairy ring, was touched by enchantment that would make the night both gentle and utterly unforgettable. Puck, having added his final error, could only cackle in wonder at the confusion blossoming like lilies in a pond. When morning whispered at the edges of the sky, and the first birds rubbed their throats awake, the spell began to work. Lysander rose from his slumber with a new brightness in his eyes that belonged to someone who had been made suddenly certain. He looked upon Helena, despite all reason, despite vows sworn to others, and his heart poured itself toward her as if a secret stream had changed its course. He declared his love to her in words that sounded like bread breaking, ordinary and necessary and sustaining. Helena, bewildered and hurt, could not understand why Lysander, who had loved Hermia only hours before, now loved only her. In the hush of the trees, the suddenness of such change felt a little like thunder that has already gone. Hermia, waking and hearing the odd new praises, felt betrayed. She could not know then that magic had been the hand that plucked at hearts. Voices rose and tumbled, some like little bells, some like stone thrown in a well, and the four were soon chasing one another through thickets and brambles, the wood swallowing them in spirals of confusion. Puck, watching with mischief balanced by a thin thread of conscience, realized his blunder. With nimble feet and a mind quick as a swallow, he darted here and there, correcting and complicating in equal measure. He swapped the spells and anointed the correct eyes, or so he intended. He performed his small interventions with the glee of someone who loves a good joke, though this joke came with beating hearts that hurt in the most human way. At the center of the hum of enchantment, Titania lay cradling the most unlikely of companions, Bottom, with an ass's head that made him look ridiculous and yet profoundly gentle. She adored him with those large, dreamy eyes of hers, because the love juice made her see what it pleased. He, for his part, found himself treated like a noble in an overnight kingdom, covered in flowers, fed with the spoils of fairy gardens, and attended by bright, obedient sprites ready to pluck fruit for him. Bottom bold, boasting Bottom was bewildered, enchanted, and utterly content. He sang bird songs as if in a dream, and slept under the care of a queen who thought him the most exquisite thing she had ever seen. When Oberon entered this strange scene and saw the queen with her monstrous companion, He laughed soft and deep. The sight was absurd, and its humor pressed out the last of his anger. He touched Titania's eyelids with an antidote, and she woke to the ordinary tenderness of a queen whose memory of the night was an odd film of laughter and regret. She reclaimed the little boy she had been nursing and reconciled with Oberon. The knot of their argument loosened, and the seasons sighed in relief. The rivers could again remember how to run kindly. The fields would dry their brows, and the world, through its many small wonders, would smile a little truer. As the lovers' quarrels grew quieter, tired men and women are truer to themselves. The four found their way back to the city and its logic. When they stood before Duke Theseus, who had come searching for them with his hunt, their wildness seemed a dream's residue. The Duke, gentle and impressed with the tender foolishness of human hearts, forgave and untied the knots. He called for joy and celebration. "Let us to the temple," he said, and the lovers, with their hearts now righted, followed, their steps even and steady as a lullaby's rhythm. In the meantime, the craftsmen who had rehearsed their comedy in the wood had returned, humbler perhaps, and full of the sort of earnestness that makes small plays large in people's hearts. The Duke had chosen to watch their rustic Pyramus and Thisbe. He loved it for its sincere clumsiness, for its plain devotion to delight. The men, bottom among them, performed clumsy tragedy with a tenderness that made the palace laugh and sigh at all the right moments. The audience saw in their stumbles an honest kind of grace. Life is often awkward, and yet joy is made from those very stumbles. When night fell on the wedding night itself, a gentle magic of another kind settled over every bed. Oberon and Titania, reconciled and content, blessed the couples whom human law and human longing had joined. The fairies walked softly through the palace chambers, sprinkling dew in the corners where sleep gathered. They blessed the beds with a promise that the children born thereafter would be fortunate and free of unhappy marks. That love which happened by fate or chance would find a gentle root. That the world, both the human world and the world of small wings and glinting eyes, would keep a tender watch. As the household in the palace quieted, the voices of jest and rehearsal fading away into pleasant, remembered sounds, a final quiet presence crossed the threshold of the hall. Puck, who had led everyone a merry dance and had learned the value of a well-placed apology, stepped forward rustle of leaves. He offered the audience a gentle pardon for any offense the night's foolishness might have caused, and suggested that perhaps all had been but a dream. If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended. His invitation was warm and forgiving, as if the whole night had been a cradle for imagination. The last thing you might try to imagine before sleep takes you fully is the wood under moonlight once more, when all mischief has been tidied and everything rests. Think of Lysander and Hermia, hands warm together, walking toward a humble, perfect future. Think of Demetrius and Helena, their earlier hardship softened by understanding, laughter breaking out where once there had been pain. Think of Bottom, who still could not entirely shake the memory of a queen's generous regard, and of the craftsmen who took their simple play glory back into daily work, smiling forever to themselves when a bit of ridiculousness suddenly brightens the day. And think quietly of the fairies, 1,000 small lights, as numerous as possible wishes, slipping like soft coins through the dark to make the world kinder and more enchanted. They are the gentle keepers of the secret that love and laughter, even when found in confusion, can bring the world nearer to gentle wonder. Now let your breath become slow and sure. Let your eyelids close as if they were the curtains of a small theater. The stage of your mind is ready for soft dreams. Imagine the moon's calm face above the trees, a faithful guardian. Hear, if you will, the last echo of Puck's apology like a lullaby. Give me your hands, if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends. Sleep then, knowing that in some hidden wood, by some silvered pond, magic and mercy still walk together, and that in your own small life there is room for a little more wonder.